Hi everyone, welcome to another fun art project with Ms. Oropeza. Today we're going to be making a beautiful Zentangled butterfly. So if we can see here, instead of coloring it in, I actually created great contrast just using a black marker. And if you guys want to try drawing it out first with pencil, let's go ahead and get started. But before we start, let's talk about Zentangle a bit and see how we can create some beautiful patterns using different elements. So the question is, how can we create pattern for our Zentangle patterns? Well, we know that pattern has repetition. And let's see what kind of elements we can use for that repetition. Well, first of all, we can use line. Line can be used in so many different ways to create pattern. For instance, vertical lines that repeat, horizontal lines that repeat, diagonal lines that repeat, wavy lines, curvy lines, zigzag lines, loopy lines, spiral lines, even broken or dotted lines that are also repetitive. So any of these types of lines, including many more, okay, we can use those to create repetition and eventually pattern. We can even combine different types of lines. So we can use curved and zigzag in one pattern, spiral and broken in another pattern. So combination of several different ones as well. How else can we create pattern? Well, we can also use shape. Shape is also very important to create pattern. We can use shapes like triangles and squares and rectangles. We can even use shapes within shapes, like hearts within hearts and circles within circles. We can use ovals, diamonds, you name it. Any type of shape can also be used to create pattern as long as it's repeated. Textures as well. Think about different types of surfaces and the way they feel, okay? So we can have like a wooden texture that looks like it's a rough texture there. We can have bumpy or hard texture like blocks, or even bumpy like hills. We can also have textures that look feathery and scaly, furry, hairy, soft, and fluffy and puffy like clouds and cotton. Okay, so we can also think about overlapping shapes to create pattern. So as long as the shape is repeated, it doesn't matter if it overlaps or not, but in this case, overlapping shapes can also create pattern. So you can see in this case, it's a triangle and it just overlaps one on top of the other. We can also use intersecting lines to create pattern, okay? So lines that cross at one point or another, or several different points. And we can also use color repetition to create pattern. Now, these are just some ideas. We're going to be putting these ideas into practice before we get started with our project. And in color repetition, guys, all we need to do is kind of follow an A, B pattern, or A, B, C, whichever way you want. In this case, we have a checkered pattern, a striped pattern, free-flowing pattern, a vine pattern here, okay? So anything that repeats, it can be any type of element that repeats to create pattern and eventually to create our Zentangle designs. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how we can create some of our own patterns for our designs. And before we get started with our butterfly, let's practice out in the sheet of paper first. So I'm going to bring out a sheet of paper and I'm going to separate my paper into four different lines. It's kind of like a tic-tac-toe game that we're going to do here. So 1, 2 going up and down, and 3, 4 going across. Okay, so like a big tic-tac-toe game. Now let's go ahead and fill these in with different types of patterns. Okay, so let's think about the different elements that we just talked about now. And I'm going to start off with a texture one. So in the texture one, I know that I can create a scaly, feathery, furry, hairy, fluffy, puffy, bumpy, hard, or wooden. These are just some examples. I really like the scaly one. So I'm going to start off with the scaly one here. And what I do is just make little bumps after bumps. And on top, I would just continue that same repetition until I finish the whole entire area. So it's just a matter of repeating your design over and over and over again until it looks nice and full and it fills up that whole area. So that whole area is going to look pretty busy. Okay. So I'm going to go all the way to the top, making that same pattern. Okay, so there we go. Now we have a scaly, feathery texture. Okay, kind of reminds me of feathers from a bird or scales from a lizard. Okay, but you can actually take it a step further and say like, oh, well, if I want to elaborate upon this, I can actually add something else to it to like make it look more interesting. In this case, I think I want to add an extra little detail. I'll just add a little dot inside each one of my little scales or feathers there. It depends on what you want to add. Maybe you want a round line that mimics that same shape, or any other type of pattern inside will work. In this case, I'm just adding a small dot. You can make it as elaborate and as complex as you want it to be. In this case, I think I'm happy with that design. I really like that. So I'm going to stop there and I'm going to move on to the next one. So I think I'm going to go for, oh, I don't know, maybe some shape. I'm going to try shapes next. And I'm going to use shapes. I'll try the circles within circles. Okay. When you're drawing your shapes, try to fill up the whole area. Some can be smaller, some can be bigger, some will be halfway there, depending on where the shape is going to be fitted into your design. So some spaces are kind of limited. I'm only drawing part of the circle. And some spaces are smaller. So I'm going to make smaller circles, just to be able to fill it in, make it look busy and full of different little patterns there. Okay, so now I have my little circles as a different pattern, and I'm happy with those. You can definitely use those as a Zentangle pattern once I get to it. Okay, now I'm going to try a different one. Let me try out maybe line. I'm going to try out my line using line as pattern here. So I think I'm going to use a combination in this one. So I'll use a combination of zigzag and straight lines. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that all the way to the top. Right, I really do like that pattern there. That's a nice one. So if you want to take it a step further, like I said before, you can even add an extra little detail that is going to enhance your shapes and your design. In this case, I'm adding a small circle within each one of my little triangular shapes there. So again, you decide how complex, how elaborate, how sophisticated you want your design to be by adding more detail into it. And you can come up with the details as you go along. Okay, oh, I like that. Very cool. So I've already used some texture to create pattern. I've used some shapes to create pattern. and also lines to create pattern. So I think I'm going to go on to my next one here. How about some overlapping shapes? Remember, it can be any shape as long as it just crosses right over each other. In this case, I'm making some circles, and I am going to overlap my circles one on top of the other. Oh, I really like that one. Kind of reminds me of bubbles, kind of floating up in the air, kind of meeting up with each other. Okay. Now, I haven't tried this one here. I'm going to try the intersecting lines and see what I can come up with. So with intersecting lines, we can do round lines, we can do straight lines, diagonal, vertical, horizontal, wavy, okay, curved, any type of line you want. You're the artist, you decide what type of line you want. Okay. Now, if you want to elaborate upon it, you can always add extra little details here and there to make it more interesting. So I'm just going to make a dot in each intersection. And there we go. I do like that pattern quite a bit. There's my next pattern there. Now, let me go ahead and try out color repetition. In this case, I'm just going to use black and white, and I'll do a checker pattern. So for my checker pattern, all I have to do is some vertical lines. And some horizontal lines. And of course, we need to shade in a pattern way so that we can get the checker pattern going on. So it's going to be A, B, A, B, A, B. And then on the next one, we'll do opposite. So it'll be B, A, B, A, B, A. Okay, and then again, A, B, A, B, A, B. And so we continue that same pattern all the way down. Now I'm just kind of adding my color there very quickly. I'm not really concerned about the way it looks. I'm just practicing with the different types of patterns here, kind of getting my hand warmed up. The Zentangle can take quite a while to create. It's can get really detailed, guys. So we're just kind of warming up right now and getting our ideas down so that we can transfer them over to our actual picture, which is going to be our butterfly. And so far, I do like these different patterns that we're coming up with here. You can think about different ones that kind of pop up to your mind as you're going along. Now, let me just show you something really interesting. Whenever we repeat lines that are in the same direction, that creates movements. So it kind of creates almost like an optical illusion where it seems like those lines are going to be moving. That can also create a pattern. And further than that, it can create an optical illusion. In this case, it's going to make it seem as if those lines kind of go deeper in. They descend into another plane, or they ascend towards us. So that's one of the cool things about using repetitive line. because repetitive line creates movement. And that can also create a nice pattern for your different spots in your butterfly. All right, look at that. Huh, that looks pretty interesting there. It seems like it's kind of bending up and down and going into different waves. Kind of reminds me of wavelengths, kind of moving up and down. It's pretty cool. So that we can even use as a pattern. Now, I tried one out with repetitive lines in a circular form, and it created this really cool wheel that if I kind of spin it around a bit, it almost seems like it's moving. So it kind of creates that motion movement effect that it seems like there's a wheel that's actually spinning, okay? So that's one of the cool things with repetition and line guides, that you can actually create movement with repetitive lines. Okay, so let's just go ahead and fill up these two last spaces. I really like rainbows. I think I'm going to use rainbows for my next one here. All right, so now for our last one here, think about a combination of shapes maybe. And let's go ahead and try something out here. I just thought about flowers right now, so I think I'm going to use a shape of a flower. And just to kind of fill in the gaps in between, I'm just going to do small dots around. So flowers and dots. I'll do my little flowers first and finish off with the dots. Remember, try to make it look busy. Sometimes it can get pretty crowded in there, but it's okay. It's a Zentangle. So just like when you doodle. When you're doodling, you're trying to fill up the spaces, trying to create different designs in there. And it just happens automatically. Now in this case, I'm just doing my little dots and my flowers. Okay, so I do like those patterns. Now I can use these wonderful pattern designs on over to my butterfly shape. So for my butterfly, I'm going to start off by drawing it out. Okay, so let's set this one aside. We're going to need it right now. But for now, let's just go ahead and focus on our butterfly shape. Okay, so for my butterfly, I'm going to start off with half a circle towards the top area here and bring out the antenna. We're only drawing half of the butterfly here. So if you want to take it a step further and add a little face while we're at it, you can go ahead and do that. Let's try to make it fun and whimsical. And I even added some little freckles there. Now we're going to go ahead and draw the body. The body's going to curve down and curve down again. So about two different segments there for the body. Okay, now we're going to move on to the wing, and the wing is actually going to come all the way up to the top corner of the paper. Make sure you get as close to the top corner of the paper as possible. And in this next segment here, we're just going to go halfway. Okay? That's because this line is going to curve and it's going to connect to this other line here with a wavy line. There we go. Now that's a really large space for just one design. So let's go ahead and section it off with a rainbow line, two rainbow lines, maybe three rainbow lines. So now we have smaller areas to fill in our designs. And we can even kind of section it off even smaller. So we can add some round lines here and a circle here. Okay, and then finally for our last wing, we're just going to curve it up and connect it to our previous wing. So this part here can be quite large. In order to section it off, we can always do the same thing and segment those areas. All right, now I think we're ready to move on to the next step. And we can use our beautiful designs that we started here. And just think about what type of pattern you want for each part of your butterfly. So let's see, I want to start with this one here. And I think I want to start off with the little flowers and just start creating some little flowers over the top part here of my butterfly's wing. Okay, so now let's go ahead and keep doing some more patterns. Just kind of think about what type of patterns you want to use. You can even come up with some new ones if you'd like. You can add different ones than the ones you started with in your practice sheet. So it just depends on you and what it is that you want to add on your butterfly. So let's go ahead and have fun adding some designs, some patterns, some shapes all over our beautiful butterfly. All right, guys, so here we go. Now we are all finished with our beautiful butterfly, and we have added beautiful designs and patterns and shapes to create a nice entangle effect. And if you want to take it a step further, you can always add a contrasting background, okay? So any color background would work. I actually used black on this one because I wanted to keep that consistency going. And notice also how I even added dark areas to bring out that contrast in my designs. So the black would be a great addition for the background. Or you can always add color to your butterfly, make it nice and colorful and cheerful, and just have fun with it, guys. So thank you so much for watching today's video, and hope to see you guys in our next video pretty soon. Thank you so much. Have a great one, guys.